my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Monday. One of the beautiful things about having this program is I get to express my opinion publicly anytime that I want. I don't have a gatekeeper. The only person that I have to submit my opinion to in order to get it published is me. Granted, the lovely Christine from time to time has a great deal to say about my opinion. And if you listen carefully, you could probably discern her influence on the program, which I think is a good thing. Barring that, however, all I need do is walk into my studio, sit in my big, comfortable, high-backed leather chair, push the on button to fire up all of the sophisticated recording equipment in the studio, and settle in to peruse the day's news. Ordinarily, it doesn't take very long to find something that piques my interest. That's not to say, though, that on any given day there haven't been a multiplicity of things that have been written. Lord knows, in our world, there's no shortage of opinion. I'll get to that in just a second. But once I have identified a piece worth responding to, and I'll tell you how I usually know that that's the topic for the day's episode, is that it causes me to lean back in my chair a little bit. It causes me to effortlessly, almost without thinking, reach for the legendary silver microphone and ease it into position. It's so perfectly placed on the desk in front of me that really it only takes a finger or two to move it into the exact spot that it has sat in thousands of times. As I gather my thoughts to respond to whatever piece of drivel I've found, I watch the levels dance up and down on the control board. It's almost as if they are beckoning me to push the button that starts the Cowboy State Politics theme. A sound that terrifies, and yes, that is the correct word, terrifies every redcoat. Often, I pause for just a moment and marvel at the incredible blessing that God has given me to be able to talk to you whenever I want, and to be able to do it in a way that is high above, very high above, just about everything else that is being produced right now. It's pretty incredible. God is very good, my friends. After all of that, I push the button, and I get started with the morning's episode. So what differentiates a piece worth responding to from just another example of the incessant noise we are bombarded with each and every day? It feels like it's almost every second. And if you pay attention to social media, it probably is. Did you know that they have noise filters for just about everything? In fact, the silver microphone has a tremendous one in it. It filters out all the ambient noise, cars going by, dogs barking in the distance, everything that you don't want to listen to while listening to an expertly executed podcast. I can already hear the response to that last comment being queued up from some of my more vocal, or rather, quick-fingered detractors. Well, David, if it filters out noise, why can we hear your voice? Very funny. But also infinitely idiotic and completely juvenile, which is precisely one of the points that I'm getting to. I think we may need a new definition of the word opinion. We're living in a world that it doesn't really matter what you post on social media. There's somebody, somewhere, that is going to type out a sentence or two, and most of the time it's not even a complete sentence. I wonder if any of these people ever graduated high school. But anyway, there's somebody somewhere that is going to put something in the comments that is entirely derogatory, and most of the time pretty stupid. And if you pay attention, which I don't recommend, by the way, but if you do, most of the time, comments left on your post are only meant to belittle you and don't further the conversation into any one productive direction. I'm sure just about everybody can relate to that. A little bit ago, I said that we need a new definition of the word opinion. I don't know that that's entirely accurate. Perhaps reintroduction to the definition of the word opinion might be more in order. The old 1828 defines the word opinion as, quote, the judgment which the mind forms on any proposition, statement, theory, or event, the truth or falsehood of which is supported by a degree of evidence that renders it probable, but does not produce absolute knowledge or certainty. It has been a received opinion that all matter is comprised in four elements. This opinion is proved by many discoveries to be false. From circumstances, we form opinions respecting future events. Aha! Most comments on social media are clearly not opinions because no thought actually went into them. And if you ask me, the people making the comments generally are incapable of thinking anyway. Here's my advice on the matter. Give them the amount of attention directly proportional to the amount of actual thought that went into said comment. If you apply this general rule, it'll eliminate 90% of the time that you spend paying attention to any of the comments, and think about all of the fun things that you could do while ignoring the lack of thought that appears on your Facebook posts. We'll continue in just a second, but first, an absolutely outrageous exposition of pure capitalism. Today's installment of Weekend Update is brought to you by the Buffalo Wool Company. I know, it's the middle of summer, and it's probably about 1,000,000 degrees outside. So you're not even thinking about your feet. I mean, how could they possibly get cold in the middle of summer? Well, they're not going to, but they will get super hot and super uncomfortable. A way that you can prevent that is with a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. Yeah, they'll keep you nice and warm on cold winter days, but they'll also keep your feet cool and dry on the hottest summer afternoon. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. If you're in the market for any type of building, whether it's a garage or a barn, or maybe you want something bigger, like a roping arena or a huge warehouse for your business, the two guys you need to talk to are Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com.
Many Americans are growing increasingly concerned about the rapidly growing U.S. government deficits, recognizing the additional printing of paper money devalues U.S. currency. To compensate, American gold and silver coins will provide wealth protection. U.S. Coin Capital provides physical gold and silver coins delivered directly to our clients. You can reach us at 1-800-878-2646, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the program. That way you'll know every time there's a new episode of Cowboy State Politics. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. And now, back to the program. Let me give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Gail Simmons. I know for a fact that there's very little thought that goes into just about everything she posts or writes or that the Cow Pie publishes. Because if there were, she wouldn't be wrong as often as she is. Admittedly, she doesn't comment on the Cowboy State Politics posts nearly as often as she used to. You'd think, though, that a person would get tired of being wrong so often. But my advice is, don't pay any attention to them. Now, the actual opinions, as Webster would call them, that I do pay some attention to are those that show up in your weekly news publication. What they call a news publication, that is. Here's why. To write a letter to the editor takes a little bit of effort. You actually have to sit down at your computer and type it out and attach your name and usually your address to it if you want the paper to print it. And if you don't think through whatever it is that you're writing about, you'll publicly embarrass yourself, which the Democrats do quite often. But at the very least, right, wrong, or indifferent, Somebody actually had to sit down and put some effort into writing a letter to the editor and then hitting the send button. Albeit it's a little bit easier now with email than it used to be when you actually had to type out a letter, put it in an envelope, and slip it into the nearest mail slot, hopefully with a postage stamp attached. But there is an inherent problem with that. There are gatekeepers, the news publication itself. They have to choose to publish the letter that you've written. And judging from the editorial boards of most Wyoming newspapers, the chances of them printing a conservative-minded letter to the editor are slim, if not none. And considering that a whole bunch of them just got shut down last week, your odds are even worse. But that's the beauty of the times we're living in. You really don't have to write a letter to the editor. It's pretty easy to publish your opus on your own social media page and let it compete on its own in the free marketplace of ideas, without the gatekeepers that think that your opinion piece will shake the very foundations of their very fragile worldview. The truth is that most people don't subscribe to a daily or weekly newspaper. So in some cases, you'll have a much broader audience if you just ignore your daily newspaper entirely. And you could be surprised at the effect your writing has. Let me give you a great example. When I first started Cowboy State Politics, I published an episode entitled, "Are Wyoming Schools Broke?" Nope. I had all the data necessary to back up my claim, and really there was no arguing with it, if you're honest, in the slightest bit. But that didn't stop the Buffalo the Buffalo Bulletin from attempting to fact-check my claim. I'm not even kidding, my friends. The editor of the Buffalo Bulletin demanded my sources, and the claim that she was challenging is that over the past couple of years, enrollment in Wyoming schools has actually gone down significantly. And during that same time period, administration and staff increased double that amount. Instead of just pointing her to the correct document, which would have been far simpler, I contacted a member of the education committee and we did an entire episode about it, complete with all the documentation necessary to prove my claim. My point is that this program was very, very new and didn't have anywhere near the audience that I have today, and yet the message was still received by the mainstream Wyoming media. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever that you can't do the exact same thing yourself. Another great example is my friend Dawn Marquardt. She got sick of listening to all the bullcrap, decided to do a little bit of research, started a Substack, and all of a sudden she has a huge audience. And by the way, she's definitely a thorn in the side of a lot of redcoats. Needless to say, I'm very proud of anybody who irritates those jerks. But the difference between Dawn's work and what a lot of people do on social media is she actually did a little bit of research and has some information to back up what she's saying. Facts are what they are. There's no my truth, your truth, or any of that nonsense. Facts just are. The conclusion you draw from them might be a little bit different, and we can have an argument about that. But there's no debate over what the facts are. The truth is that Bo Beitman, Dennis Beitman, gave 7 of the 10 committees in the Wyoming Senate to straight-up redcoats. That is a fact. He went to a conference in Florida in which he said that Wyoming wants nuclear waste. That is a fact. And in his own words, I have the recording, Judy. There's no question about it. That is a fact. Now, we can have a debate over whether turning Wyoming into a nuclear waste dump is a good thing or a bad thing. I tend to think that it's not so great. But we can definitely have that argument so long as we agree on what the facts are. And so much of the stuff that you see on social media doesn't have anything backing it up. It's merely an assertion that doesn't have any substantive support. And that's what you get most of the time on social media. Come to think of it, we should probably start referring to comments on social media as exactly what they are. Bullcrap. Of course, you can use the more commonplace nomenclature if you like. It actually might be more descriptive. But they're definitely not opinions, nor should they be treated as such. Just give them the amount of attention directly proportional to the amount of thought that went into them, which in most cases is 0. Now you might say, now David, you're telling us not to worry about it, and you just spent the last 13 minutes telling us why we shouldn't. It's true, and that is 13 minutes of my time and your time. Sometimes pointing out idiocy takes careful deliberation, and that, my friends, is why I do the heavy lifting for you, so you don't have to. Well, that'll do it for today's installment of Monday Reload. Have a good week, and we'll talk again on Wednesday when we'll have an interview with Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray. The good secretary is pretty fired up in it, and it's really entertaining. So we'll do that on Wednesday. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.